through their worldly perceptions and through identification with the personality, are trying to affect righteous or good change in this reality, only in the end to have it turn to its opposite. And that from within our deepest part of ourselves, that true centre, that we're connected to something much greater, that universal intelligence, that cosmic divine intelligence, which constantly seeks to interact into this reality and through us. This is humanity's true purpose, is that we be mediums for divine reality to express itself into matter, you see. And not many people really understand this. They're trying to enlighten their personalities, their egos, thinking that they can some way spiritualize their personalities, but this is really not the case.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah, they're trying to constantly add, they're trying to grow, they're trying to become enlightened. But really when we look at true spirituality, it comes with the death, and that is the death of the personality. The personality, being this frequency, this collective glamours and illusions which make up what we believe ourselves to be while we're tuned in this reality, you see. And, the divine reality which constantly seeks to express itself can only do so if we're out of the way. And I think that's one of the great stumbling blocks for a lot of the New Age movement in terms of their grasping onto their idealisms out there. And it's the same with religions of old as well, through their grasping onto, their various spiritual teachings through books or, through their own self-perspective, so to speak, they've really not understood the deeper gnosis. We could say that these avatars that did come down with an actual living presence and energy which enables the human race at that particular time to be able to free up in terms of its internalized spark and actually perceive and actually receive divine emanations and radiations. Learning more and more about the avatar consciousness, I think, will slowly enable humanity to truly understand the position of where there is. We hear of people constantly, did Jesus exist or did Buddha exist and all that, but they're really missing the point. They're trying to hold on to these personalities, and trying to grasp onto the shadows and look to understand it from their own personalized perspective. When we actually truly have come to find the underlying thread, the golden mean which lies behind all the teachings, and we must do this through our own resonation with divine truth itself, that we will find that thread, and when we do, we realise that the forms or the play which has happened upon the planet, whether these, did Jesus exist, did Buddha exist, really becomes irrelevant. Now a lot of people would pounce on me for saying that, because, that then what are we grasping onto in terms of teaching? The whole point is not to grasp. When we resonate more deeply with the divine field of life itself, then those teachings will take on a whole new, we'll be able to read what we call the living book. And that living book exists everywhere. And the teachings of Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Muhammad will be seen in their true light, which is not the play of shadows which we see, this is the play of personalities which is governed through time. And then we'll find what the true avatar consciousness is. And an avatar consciousness is not the being itself. It comes through the being. We here prepare ourselves in terms of our physicalized reality through seeking truth and coming to those various initiations of life. Not the form life we're talking about here, that if we become seekers of truth and service of the race in alignment with this underlying intuitional plan that we are perceiving from our internalized spark, then slowly we come into resonance with divine life, and what we term the avatar consciousness is able to penetrate through into this reality. And of course, that consciousness is not bound by time or by space, and at certain times within the collective cycles and shifts, there enables portals of opportunity for divine consciousness as through various avatars upon the planet to come through and anchor their frequency into this reality. You see, whether it be a Jesus, a Buddha, or a Krishna, what we find at the end of certain cycles and at the beginning of certain cycles, because of the great shifts and confusions and dramas and traumas which are happening, there is what we find is that divine gnosis, that divine teaching is ever given to humanity through an impulse. The avatars might be individualized beings in terms of a Jesus or a Buddha, or they might be collectively as within a group, all embodying, holding a certain frequency, going through certain deaths of self to enable the greater divine consciousness to slowly come through and permeate into this realm, so that it can slowly assist in the awakening up of humanity and of course the planet itself. It's like anchoring a thread, sending a new impulse. Religions, so-called, are acting in the shadow of that impulse, so to speak. And we come again to the great misunderstandings of religion. When an avatar makes itself present upon the planet, through whatever various form it may choose, or in whatever means it may choose, that which springs off the teachings that it gives is then the externalized representative of the actual vibrational and energetic teaching and emission which is given while the avatar is present upon the planet. So what builds up around that through time and through space, these religions, these movements or whatever, really are born in its shadow. The actual living energies may sustain, and the residue of those energies when the avatar was present upon the planet still to some degree permeate through the collective mind and heart of the planet and humanity itself. But then we see very quickly the world ego start to reassert itself, and through its reassertion formalizing certain practices, occult groups, all these sorts of things, churches, religions, all these sorts of things which build around it, which become, as time and space go further on, they become further and further away from the initial initiatic impulse, so to speak, which the avatar originally brought in. You see, so
creates its opposite, its anti-Christ.
Yeah, eventually it does turn to its opposite in the dualistic field, and we're seeing this with the Roman Catholic Church and Buddhism, and with most of the mainstream religions today during the Great Shift. They're actually embodying a twisted variation, or in fact opposition, to the initial divine impulse, and it's becoming very obvious. I mean, actually, show us a priest that doesn't mess with children these days. Ridiculous. So understanding the avatar consciousness is really important for humanity. It's one of those great keys, and that at present, that portions of the race now have the ability, through their seeking truth and alignment, to actually bring in that consciousness now, present, you see. And that, that this time we have the opportunity and the portal which is opening to have a collective awakening, which means that it's not going to be some Jesus out there or some historical, representative or coming back down to save the planet. Is that the consciousness, the divine consciousness, is waking us within us all, preparing the ground down here, so that that great intelligence, what we term Christos or the great Buddha itself, may come into this reality very soon. It's already coming, in terms that it's slowly awakening us from within. And what we're seeing in terms of the New World Order out there is this resistance and